Today, it may be December, but the hot stove is heating up. We break down not one, but two separate reports that are pegging Pete Alonso with the Washington Nationals. Plus, we get an update of what LuisAngel Acuna is doing down in winter ball on this edition of Mets Digest. What is going on, everybody? Flobo Boyce here, rocking with you, making sure to give you the news and notes you need about the orange and blue. Can you believe it's December? Wow, this year feels like it's been 2 weeks and 20 years long, all rolled into one. Before we get into today's news update about Pete Alonso and company, do me a favor. If you're watching this right now, hit that like, hit that subscribe. Make sure you're the first to know when new content is coming down the pipe. You don't want to be in that not subscribed section, that 78.6%. That's not cool. You want to be in that 21.4%, where the real cool kids are hanging out. When I say it's been a crazy week for rumors, I'm not lying to you. The last time we were on Mets Digest, we were talking about that whole Juan Soto to Boston rumor that really got round up during the Thanksgiving weekend. It's December 1st, the Sunday, as I record this, and so it's not necessarily the end of Thanksgiving weekend, but it might as well be. Because the other big free agent question, especially for us Mets fans, is where is Pete Alonso going to end up next year? Now, there's been a lot of videos, a lot of content, a lot of articles written about this, whether Pete's going to be. Here's someone who is pretty much a homegrown star. Not pretty much. He is a homegrown star in the months of the 2024 season where the team wasn't doing that well. He was considered one of the team captains. I use that term in quotes because the Mets don't have one officially between him, Francisco Lindor, and Brandon Nimmo to help put the team on the right path. But you know, he's at the age now where he's earned a right to get paid, earned the right to see the offers, what's best for him and his family. And of course, many teams would like to have someone like Pete Alonso on the squad. I know there's haters out there that say he is not as athletic or it was a down year, but when it comes down to it, there's about 20 first basemen who aren't as good as Pete. But that said, it is rumors season, and at first, I actually have the dates pegged here. It is also about a week ago when we were trying to do the whole like I'm an insider with my predictions of where we think players are going to end up. And I first read this about a week ago. I said to myself, there's no way. This one comes from Mark Fanson, who was an insider at MLB.com, talking about who would be best behooved to sign Pete Alonso if the Mets and Pete can't get to an agreement. And he, as it says, the Washington Nationals. Says the Washington needs an influx of power after finishing 2024 with an NL low of 135 home runs, and there's no bigger home run threat available this winter than Alonso, with 226 home runs since he broke into the league in 2019, where he also ranks second in the majors behind only Aaron Judge with 232. Yeah, kid's been mashing, and as it is right now, he is number 3 all time on the team home run list, only behind that would be David Wright and Darryl Strawberry, if memory serves, eclipsing Mike Piazza this year. Let's take a look at the stat line. Again, there's a down year for Pete Alonso, and a down year still getting a 30 plus is pretty good. And because the team as it is has multiple offensive options. Now you do have Mark Vientos, who is on pace to do something very similar. You do have Francisco Lindor, who can contribute, Brandon Nimmo, who can contribute, and whether that we got a couple free agent signings and bats as well. The Mets aren't necessarily hurting for offense. When we were on, we were doing at peak about 7 runs a game. That was during that hot June and July run. And so a lot of times we get kind of victims of recency bias, and we say, well, we don't necessarily need someone with Pete production, but those are the cold hard facts. I do think there's a lot of teams that can use them, and the Washington Nationals would definitely need someone like Pete, but the question becomes, will it be someone who's going to do that? And so if that was the only article, this pretty much would have been a done deal. This would have been an issue that would have been kind of just discussed and pushed over the blanket or underneath the carpet, not the blanket. But it isn't the only thing that came out this week. As I record this, right before the Thanksgiving break, ESPN in their ESPN Insider article, which is their whole paywall thing when you go more in depth with teams and more in depth with sports journalism, David Schoenfield actually has something to this effect as well. And while one thing could be an isolated incident, it could be a rumor. but I wonder if this is going to be the start of a trend, or maybe this is just a thing to drive up the price for Pete Alonso. Dave Scofield wrote this just a couple days after this about the Washington Nationals and how they can benefit from Pete Alonso as well. He says the team, with this right now, Keeper Ruiz, the only active player, is set to make more than $5 million in 2025. Of course, the Strasburg situation's a whole different pot of pumpkin, as my mom would say. He's taking home $35 million. Most of the roster remains pre-arbitration. They are an incredibly young team, and after ranking next to last in their majors and home runs, the Nats need a power hitter. I mean, who doesn't really? Alonso would make a big statement similar to the Jason Worth signing in 2011. How did that turn out? And provide a veteran presence to help the young hitters such as James Wood and Dylan Cruz while filling the hole at first base, which I do think there's some truth to that, because if talking about young hitters that can mash, you see a lot of the players that would be on the block, like Brent Rooker over at Oakland, and we thought that he would have been an option to fill in the offensive hole if he were to walk, is not being sold. So there is very few options when it comes to someone who's on the block, who's able to contribute, who could be an anchor of the team. Pete Alonso, fit the profile for the Washington Nationals. But the idea of Pete becoming a Nat just seems kind of off and kind of wrong, right? You have someone who's in a system, you have someone who's really much ingrained himself in the New York population, has their charity set up there, has a bit of what I call souvenir cup recognition. When the team was in the drills of the rankings over the 23 season, he was still pretty much out front and center. He doesn't take as many questions as Francisco Lindor, and so maybe if there's a captain debate, I will still put it alongside Alonso, but I don't really see the upside for Pete going over to Washington, even though he definitely seems to be sorely needed and definitely seems to be in that system. And so I ask you this. We ask about what would the lineup be if there really was no Pete Alonso. Typically, people will say, hey, move Vientos over to first and maybe call up someone on the third base side to fill on the other side, whether it's Brett Beatty, whether it's moving over Iglesias, whether it's LuisAngel Acuna moving over to third because he will not play shortstop. Let's be wrong. Let's be here. Well, as it is right now, it is the first day of December. If Pete Alonso were to walk, do you try to find someone who's a free agent to fill that as a one-for-one spot? I'm thinking about Vladimir Guerrero. Or do you really promote from within? Do you slide someone like Vientos over? I think that question changes over time, especially when we realize over 175 million comes off the books. But to me, it was interesting that both MLB.com and ESPN.com are linking Pete Alonso to the Washington Nationals. Make you wonder whether or not there's some truth to that, or whether or not there's going to be one of those propaganda situations to drive up the price. And well, speaking about LuisAngel Acuna, someone who really stepped up when Francisco Lindor went down with a back injury, and really much would be in the Mets' plans in 2025 moving forward, whether or not it's going to be an everyday player, position player, or coming off the bench, has really put themselves to work over at Venezuelan winter ball. This comes from SNY TV, giving a bit of report about how the semi-rookie has done very well this season. John Flanagan writes, the speedy infielder helped the Cardenales de Lara secure their doubleheader sweep on Friday as he reached base 4 times, stole 3 bases, and drove in 3 runs, and scored 3 runs of his own. Acuna now hitting .388 with 2 doubles, 1 triple, 1 home run, 9 RBI, 9 stolen bases, and an impressive .996 OPS over his first 17 Winter League games. Most of his time in the field has been spent at shortstop, only logging 1 outfield appearance thus far. And there's one thing I would say, going back to the Pete Alonso thing and rolling into this as well, with Acuna doing so well, being able to be brought up in a hot seat situation when the Mets were in their playoff runs, that we have options for the first time in a long time. Now, for me personally, I would love to see what we can do with Pete Alonso. I do think there's a bit of a Cody Rhodes finish the story with Pete, especially being a homegrown power masher, 2-time home run winner, and being able to finish his story here in Queens. But for whatever reason, whether or not it's a new chapter, whether or not you want to put he wants to do something else, whether or not he feels that he wants to be the guy and get a captaincy elsewhere, we have options more than ever before. And the fact that LuisAngel Acuna is someone who's able to have a little bit of power despite his youth and size is making Pete more replaceable, by committee. You're not going to find a 1v1 swap for someone like Pete. I think any team that would sign him will put him on all the posters and put him in all the Tonight Show or sketches or this Saturday Night Live appearances, whatever. But I do think the Mets would be okay if they were able to say, you know, we're going to promote from within, get some smart choices and upgrades, and maybe get ourselves a little bit more down the line. What killed the Mets in the 2024 season wasn't talent. It was pretty much we ran out of gas, and we had to play from underneath for about 2.5 months. So if you have a team that's solid and is able to put yourself in a healthier position earlier, then you may not need someone like an Alonso. I know, perish the thought. Well, what do you say about that? We understand we want Pete to stay. If he walks, it's okay, I guess, for some of you guys out there watching these videos. But the Washington Nationals, they still play in our division. How would you feel about that? How would you feel about Pete Alonso coming back to Citi Field in the division as a rival? That's kind of a hot take, but MLB.com or ESPN may have something there. That said, you reached the end of the video. Thank you so much for rocking with me on this edition of Mets Digest. Can't believe it's already December. Let me know. I read all the comments, what you think about the video. Positive, negative, everything in between. This could be really huge, a turning point for everyone involved, but I want to know what you're thinking right now. My name is Flobo Boyce alongside Mike D'Angelo with the team here at Mets Digest. We'll be back next time, and as always, it's LGM to the bitter end.